I'm Deborah Rosati. I'm the founder and CEO of Women Get On Board. And this is Women Get On Board in Conversation. Our goal with our video series is to offer business leaders advice for their board journey through thought-provoking conversations with experts. We're thrilled to bring you insights that will empower you with confidence and courage to lead and serve on corporate boards. Today, I am pleased to be speaking with Scott Baldwin, co-founder of DirectorPrep, to discuss a topic that is excellent for every board leader to understand: the 6 habits of the savvy director. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So maybe we'll start off, Scott. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your career and background to bring you to being co-founder of DirectorPrep? A little background would be great.
Oh, thanks for the question. And, the reality is I'm a director. I like to say just like you, but Deborah, you're here. It's like, but it's like so many in your audience. I'm a director who's always striving to get better at what I do. And I started somewhere and I got to somewhere, and we're always in the spirit of, continuous improvement, trying to do more. But in many ways, I am a board leader. I'm usually the director who, when nobody's going to get it done, you need someone to step up and get it done. But also combined, I'll suggest, with practical governance know-how and very much an entrepreneurial mindset. I'm a certified corporate director. That's the ICD.D designation. And my preference is to serve private, nonprofit, and government-funded organizations by sharing deep expertise in e-learning, digital media, and the creative arts industry. And for example, I currently serve on the board of Manitoba Film and Music. I'm an author and a publisher of a bi-weekly blog, The Savvy Director, with my partner, Alice Sayant, and co-founder of DirectorPrep.com, a for-profit social purpose company that provides practical support to directors preparing for their board role so they are ready to collaborate and influence those decisions with confidence.
So Scott,
you helped me write that. You helped me write that. That's what Women Get On Board.
We help each other. we help each other on our journey. So Scott, clearly qualified experience, but what I really like about everything that you bring to market under DirectorPrep is the practical tips. And so love to learn for our audience and maybe background, because we're going to talk about the 6 habits of the savvy director, your framework, sure. But maybe what inspired you to develop that framework? And then we'll go through each habit.
Well, it's one part of the interesting story is back in, say, 2002, when I was getting on a board, it was a representative board. And in terms of board models, especially in Canada, those are very difficult to manage. It's a federated situation where there's a national organization. Each province has its own legal status. And I was sent to serve on the national board. And I was sent to serve as a representative with direction that, we're really not happy with the direction where the organization's going. We're losing members, et cetera. We need to get the CEO replaced. And okay, I'm going to get on this first board. Let's see what happens. So I pack up my laptop and everything and head to Toronto for this is my first board meeting, not just on this board, but first board meeting ever. And when I'm in the air, unbeknownst to me, my local association sent a letter to the national board demanding that the CEO get fired. And then they put all the names on the letter, including mine. So how do you think that went over when I showed up to the meeting? Like, I got killed, and I think I'm still in recovery. So ever since then, I had to decide, am I going to get better at this? And that's thankfully discovered an organization in Winnipeg called the Manitoba Quality Network, who are very focused on board governance, and then also the ICD, the Institute of Corporate Directors. And I got in the path because I realized I needed to learn what this job was all about. And in so doing, my consulting practice, which was a general management practice, quality assurance, quality control, became very focused on board governance because be honest with you, it lit me up. It's something that I thought I could use my whole toolbox. And for any of your members who get on a board, whatever they're in the C-suite or however, they will find that experience, right? Like, use everything in your toolbox to think like a director and to be a director. So I got involved in that. And in the course of our journey, I came across a survey. And it was a survey from a global executive search firm based in the States. And they called it Understanding the Behaviors That Drive Board Effectiveness. And this is in the summer of 2016. And their goal was to better understand why some boards made better decisions than others. And they contacted over 400 corporate directors from these large companies. And what was really interesting, now we're talking directors from Asia, Australia, Brazil, continental Europe, North America, and the UK. And they were asked to rate 12 behaviors. And across the board from those countries, the same 5 ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And went, oh, this is okay. We've got to find out more about this. What is going on here? And the only real difference was, and those behaviors were to possess the courage to do the right thing for the right reasons. Number 1, willing to constructively challenge management when appropriate, demonstrate sound business judgment, and to ask the right questions. And the 5th was to possess independent perspective to avoid groupthink. And okay, this is common across all continents. This is like, these are these directors who are saying, this is what enables us to make better decisions than other directors. So we were in our work thinking about finding a framework that could help directors become better at what they did. And what we decided to do was to adapt that research and that data into the formation of what we call the Savvy Director Framework. And consequently, the 6 habits for which we added and tweaked it a little bit.
Wow, very inspiring. It's amazing, sometimes fueled by fire or fueled by baptism, where you're in there and you're feeling the pain. And I love that your consistent story is to do better, to show up better, to improve along the way. So maybe let's get started with your 6 habits.
Okay.
So the first one you've got is build governance skills. So maybe just framing that up, and maybe an example of, a director and how they can build governance skills. I know we've got 6 to get through, so.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it has to start there. And unlike that survey where they were talking to established directors who had been at it for a long period of time, we felt we wanted to put building your governance skills right at the start. In this circular framework, this continuous improvement loop, because we never stop learning. We're always wanting to improve what we do, but it's really about accessing the resources that you need to understand the board's stewardship role and your responsibilities as a director. So whether you come to Women Get on Board, take their Financial Essentials course, take any of the other programs that they've got going, that's all about building the base that allows you to become a good director. And in the course of your governance journey, I'm suggesting that that's just a step that does not stop you. Those are the best directors, or those that we refer to as savvy, always have this thirst for knowledge.
And would you say that's really what you've been describing as sort of your toolkit, your director's toolkit, that you've got this toolkit that you come in, these are the tools you have, and that enabled you. So your foundational piece, your first habit is build those governance skills. And
absolutely.
And then let's go into your second skill, which is to prepare for meetings. We were just chatting in advance of this session, and Scott, you described it very much like preparing for a board meeting. So can you talk about that particular skill?
No matter where we are in our director journey, if we're not feeling a little bit excited, nervous, about an upcoming meeting, I'm not sure we're taking it seriously enough sometimes. And for me, the level of angst that I may feel going into a meeting is directly proportionate to how much prep I've done ahead of time. And having a disciplined way to approach that board kit when it first arrived, to prepare your questions, to do the work, run the miles, think outside the material that you've got in front of you, perhaps challenge it with critical thinking. Think of the questions that you want to ask where you can add value, not necessarily to every single agenda item, but where can you personally add value? And that's all part of preparing for meetings, so that you spend time before each and every meeting, whether it's a committee meeting or your board meeting, so you're ready to add real value to the board and committee discussions.
Well, I know I follow your biweekly blogs. I follow your guides, Scott, and they are just so practical. And I know you have tips on civically preparing for meetings. So let's go to your third habit, asking great questions.
For us here at DirectorPrep, the ability to ask great questions equals influence. It enables you to make your point sometimes in a very safe way without confrontation. The power of a question versus, expressing a hard and fast opinion sometimes. So we just wrote a blog last week on clarifying questions. and we called it trust but clarify. And for a director who's new to a board, sometimes that's a real safe way to get involved, get engaged in the discussion by just asking a clarification statement, like, let me understand this, or could you tell me that a little bit more about, or did I hear you correctly? You know, that type of a question that enables you to draw out a little bit further. Otherwise, asking great questions is about staying curious. You ever wonder when, you know, maybe your children, if you have children when they were young, or children that you know are so insanely curious when they're young, and then they go to school and they get rewarded for having answers, not so much for asking questions. And then as they flow into the workplace, that reward system continues, and we're not necessarily thinking and staying as curious as we could to get to the bottom of an issue, or to add value by asking a question that can prompt a discussion to get to a better decision. You really want to try to move the ball forward with well thought out questions that help get to the heart of the issue. What are we really talking about at that board meeting? Deborah,
I
you
read your
you
blog on
froze.
Sunday, and I love your equations. The equation for clarifying was fuzzy. Okay. All right. Yeah. Can we pause for a minute, Kelsey? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but
So Scott, thank you for sharing, you know.
Oh, Deborah, sorry, can you start again? We just weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott, thank you so much for sharing how to ask great questions, because that is a skill in itself. So let's talk about your fourth habit, collaborating with others.
mm-hmm. You know, that's really a key to success when you're trying to build a culture of inquiry in the boardroom, that ability to collaborate well with others so that you treat the board and management with respect, and you're working toward reaching a common understanding. There will be skills of all levels around your board table, and there may well be situations where you know more than somebody else. And I've seen what I'll call a savvy director in a meeting who knows the topic inside and out, but will ask a clarifying question for the benefit of others, you know, just to try and move that. And that, to me, that's an example of collaborating well. And when you collaborate well with others, you know, collaboration equals consensus decisions. And that's what you're trying to get to in many ways, just as when we're preparing for meetings, our preparation equals that boardroom confidence.
I love all your equations. So let's go to your fifth skill, and you've talked your fifth habit, and you've talked about this already, about being independently minded. So how does a director think independently?
You know, they think independently by believing in themselves, that with their own curiosity, they have something to offer that may not just take everything at face value that's presented in front of them. It's all about seeing with your own eyes, and to avoid groupthink and to challenge the status quo, but in a respectful manner. Because let's remember, when we're asking questions or we're thinking independently and we have a question, people always remember how you make them feel. And if you're asking a very accusatory question or an accusatory tone to the CEO or another director, they may shut down and they're not going to look forward to your next question. So as we think independently, it's about seeing with our own eyes and realizing, I think it was an Einstein quote, it was small is the number of them that see with their own eyes and feel with their own heart. I've got a 5-foot Einstein poster of quotes outside of our den that I walk into every night. And that's the one that rings true for me all the time. And I almost believe that in many ways that is core to how I try to approach being a savvy director someday.
So Scott, interesting. You never know where your day shows or who you end up speaking to. So I got if I could share, because this was about thinking independent, I got a LinkedIn message from a woman who attended a workshop I had done through Women in Capital Markets sometime earlier in the year. And she reached out, and she's on a new board, and they got the slate of candidates, and they were all white men. In her mind, she knew. So I ended up speaking to her, and she said she's going a bit rogue on this, but she was like, it didn't feel right. And I said, well, your job, you have a fiduciary duty to act to think differently. And she says, oh, I didn't want to, rock the boat. I go, no, you have a fiduciary duty to do that. And once I kind of gave her that courage to say, yeah, what you're doing is right. You wanted what's best. So that was an example. Just yesterday, I spoke to someone where, she sort of was challenged, should she think independently? And I said, well, that is the right way to be thinking. So
That's
Just
great
a
advice.
small example.
Fantastic advice. Yeah, it's because at the end of the day, we're trying to avoid groupthink.
Well, and that's
And-
it. And she didn't feel right and wasn't making sense. So, and then she took action from it rather than just saying it doesn't feel right. She wants to come back with some potential candidates. So she took it even further.
You know,
So,
I know you're going to the next question, but
Yep.
you know, this happened to me last week, and I still have smoke coming out of my ears. I was at a board meeting, and they were having an excuse for a board meeting they had to meet the certain number, but they were really wanting to get to a strategic planning session. So they ran the board meeting in half an hour, and the chair just drove through the agenda. No one looked at the financial statements. There were no questions, and as a director who care, you know, you need to have that offline question with the chair after. It's like, why even bother having the meeting? Like, none of us have a chance to think critically or to think independently about the work that we have here. Like, we're just checking a box to say we had a meeting. It was a complete waste of time.
well, and I think the pause, you took the opportunity to do it after the meeting versus during the meeting. And I think there's different phases to the meeting. So that's a way to have influence. You had your voice heard. So let's go to your 6th habit, demonstrating courage. Can you speak to that?
I will. And I think the example that I just gave is one that for me, I had to, you know, you think, do I do this or not? Like, you know, how much is this my hill I want to die on, right? But you remember from the global survey that I was talking about at the very beginning, of all those directors around the world, the number one key behavior that they cited was courage. And you want to maintain your integrity. And really, it's all about, don't be afraid to do the right thing for the right reasons.
Well, and that is your fiduciary duty. You have you're steward of the future, you're steward of sustainability. You have a fiduciary duty, and courage. It takes time, but it doesn't matter. You know, don't wait 3 years before you're really comfortable being on the board. If you see something that doesn't make sense to you, maybe there's others that are thinking the same thing too.
Yeah. And how do you get there? Like, how do you get the confidence to have that courage? Well, another formula: preparation plus independence equals courage. And that helps you go there.
I think you should have a chalkboard with all your equations. I think you need a blog.
Right here.
You just do a blog with all your equations. I love them. And sometimes you share them, like, I'm trying to finish this equation. What would you add to it?
That's right.
I love it.
Thank you.
So, you know, so we've had this opportunity to talk to you about the 6 habits: build governance skills, prepare for meetings, ask great questions, collaborate with others, think independently, and demonstrate courage. So what would be your key takeaways for our audience today from our conversation?
I think number one, if we talk about this being the six habits of the savvy director, I like to think of the savvy director as being aspirational. It's not something you go to school for, or you get a piece of paper or take an online course. Somehow you've all of a sudden just become, overnight, the director everybody wants to have on their board. You know, you're that director who may not necessarily speak to, you know, just every item on the agenda, but has that one key question that can move things along, because you have this judgment, common sense, practicality, this ability to, and capacity to know how to do. That's the French, like savoir faire is where savvy comes from. And that's knowing how to do. And really, when we think of the savvy director, it's the capacity for appropriate action. And that's what it is that you want to do. So it's aspirational in nature. It's a continuous improvement loop. It's not like we accomplish one thing. We do it every meeting. We're always learning. We're always having to think about our questions and prepare well. Everyone can access this, no matter where you are in your journey. As I talked about, I started like when 2002 and then 2007 and I'm still trying to figure this out. And you just keep working at it. So whether you're at the beginning of your director journey or well along the way, a savvy director, a veteran director, also has a responsibility to give back, I believe, and to encourage people, just as you did with your member who called you looking for some advice. And really what this is adding up to is the ability for you to add your value to the work of the board through, if you think of value as being in that intersection between your knowledge, your influence, and And what's the third one, Deborah? Oh,
Leadership.
leadership, of course.
I follow you. I know your diagrams.
So that leadership, you may become a board chair or committee chair, but it's all of those habits for who is the savvy director. It does mean that you have the capacity to do these things because you know how to do savoir-faire.
Love it. So if people want to find out more about you or the work you do at DirectorPrep, how can they find you?
Come see us at DirectorPrep.com. It's really that simple. Click across the top. There's a link for the blog. You can click on that blog. You can sign up every 2 weeks. You get a piece of free content, which is very well researched. My partner, Alice Sayant, is very involved in that, as am I. And each of those blogs takes about 4 days to put together. There's a lot of research, a lot of homework, but it's something we believe in doing for our director community so that, our own personal mission is to try and have better boards, no matter what level of governance that you're at. So DirectorPrep.com is the easiest way to get a hold of us, or by email, Scott@DirectorPrep.com.
And that's it for this edition of the Women Get On Board in Conversation. Scott, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights with our Women Get On Board community. And to find more resources for your board journey, you can join us at womengetonboard.ca.